hello, namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Donald Trump has fired off a new letter to NATO. It is loud, full of capital letters and exclamation marks. And there's a clear demand. He wants every NATO member to stop buying Russian oil, and he wants 50 to 100% tariff on China. The letter, interestingly, leaves India out. But Trump's silence on that front is just as striking as his threats. So now allies are left scratching their heads. What does Donald Trump really want? And where does this leave America's partners? Tonight we'll decode this letter and tell you about the confusion it has sparked. While global capitals debate Trump's latest statement, the US is raising a fresh complaint about India. Why don't you buy our corn? A top US negotiator is visiting New Delhi. His visit could restart stalled trade talks. We will look at what's on the table and how far both sides are willing to go. Also on the show, how Vladimir Putin is testing NATO with drones. In less than 1 week, Russian drones have been sighted over 2 NATO members. Why India should have refrained from playing Pakistan in the Asia Cup. How London plunged into chaos over the weekend over immigration. West Asian powers are discussing an Arab NATO. Is the idea realistic? Why China is cracking down on Nvidia, the world's biggest chip company, and how the job market is turning into an AI nightmare. All this and more coming up. As always, the headlines first. Nepal's interim Prime Minister unveils her new cabinet. As the Himalayan nation seeks to restore order, the previous government was ousted by youth-led anti-corruption protests. More than 70 people were killed in the violence. It was the worst unrest since Nepal abolished monarchy in 2008. Bangladesh's reform charter hits political roadblocks. The interim government says that parties have largely agreed on it, but divisions remain over the legality of the charter itself. Critics argue that it cannot override the existing constitution. The charter proposes a 2-term limit for prime ministers and expands the powers of the president. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Washington will support Israel in achieving its goals in Gaza. Rubio is currently in Israel. Tomorrow he will be traveling to Qatar, a key US ally in the region. Rubio's trip comes just days after Israel attacked Hamas leaders in Doha. The Prime Ministers of Hungary and Sweden spar over organized crime. Hungary's Viktor Orban accuses Stockholm of not pursuing criminals who exploit minors. The Swedish Prime Minister calls the remark outrageous lies. He claims Orban is desperate ahead of the upcoming Hungarian election. And South Sudan's opposition calls for mobilization of forces. This is to carry out a regime change. This comes after their leader was put on trial for treason. In 2018, the president and his long-term rival agreed on a power-sharing deal which has been unraveling for months now. Confuse the enemy. It's a core principle of the art of war. But looks like Donald Trump read the book wrong because he's confusing everyone, his enemies, his partners, his officials, and maybe even himself. Look at the US president's latest move. He has written an open letter to NATO members. It's full of random double quotes, all caps, and exclamation marks. But somewhere in there is a policy. Tonight we'll try to decode what that policy is. This letter is basically an appeal to put more pressure on Russia. Trump wants sanctions and tariffs. But here's the interesting part. While the letter mentions China, it does not mention India. Let me read from it. This is what Trump has said. I am ready to do major sanctions on Russia when all NATO nations stop buying oil from Russia. I believe that this plus NATO as a group placing 50% to 100% tariffs on China will also be of great help in ending this deadly but ridiculous war. Now, to give you some background, Trump's peace effort has hit a dead end. He met Vladimir Putin last month to push for a deal, but Putin has shown no interest. He won't stop the war until his demands are met. So Ukraine and Europe have turned to Plan B. They want Donald Trump to impose more sanctions on Russia, to squeeze Putin even more. But there's a problem. Trump is not willing to do that. He wants other NATO members to make sacrifices too. And frankly, it's a fair point. Let me show you some data. European countries buy 6% of Russia's crude exports, 6%. NATO member Turkey also buys 6%. And when it comes to refined products, Turkey buys 26% from Russia. And natural gas? Well, it's the EU all the way. They buy 51% of Russian exports. Now, Trump did not mention natural gas, but he mentioned oil. And he wants all NATO members to stop buying Russian oil. He also wants them to impose 50 to 100% tariffs on China, which raises two questions. One, why has Trump mentioned China and not India? And two, will NATO members agree? Now, we have seen Trump soften his rhetoric against India. The fact is, he pushed New Delhi too hard and looks like he realizes it now. On Friday, Trump spoke about his India policy. This is what he said.
India was Russia's biggest customer. I put a 50% tariff on India because they're buying oil from Russia. That's not an easy thing to do. That's a big deal, and it causes a rift with India.
Many U.S. lawmakers had questioned Trump's policy. They accused the U.S. president of sabotaging America's ties with India. At the same time, they questioned his warmth towards China because Beijing also buys Russian oil. In fact, they buy more Russian oil than India does. Yet China did not get tariffs. Only India did. So a lot of US politicians questioned this double standard. So maybe Trump is backpedaling. Maybe he's correcting his mistake. Which brings us to the second question. Will NATO members agree? Well, I can imagine Europe abandoning Russian oil. That's their long-term plan anyway. But 50 to 100% tariffs on China, that is a non-starter. More than 21% of EU imports come from China. This includes appliances, phones, machinery. Imagine a 50 to 100% tariff on those. It would raise prices in Europe considerably, and Trump knows this. He knows that Europe will not impose steep tariffs on China. Then why is he demanding it? Well, perhaps to shift responsibility from himself. Right now, Trump is under fire for the stalled talks. His critics say that he was played by Putin. So by asking NATO to pitch in, he's spreading the blame. But if you're China or Europe, this must be very confusing. And I'll tell you why. US and Chinese negotiators met in Madrid today. It was their second day of trade talks. And listen to what Trump said about that, about these talks. The big trade meeting in Europe between the United States of America and China has gone very well. A deal was also reached on a certain company that young people in our country very much wanted to save. That certain company is likely TikTok. Trump says a deal has been reached to save it. Remember, the US had asked China to divest from TikTok, but it wasn't clear who would pick up that stake. Now, looks like Trump has found someone. He also says the trade talks went, and I'm quoting, very well. Now, do you see how confusing this is? He is expediting talks to strike a trade deal with China, but he is asking Europe to impose 50 to 100% tariffs on them. It's confusing for all parties. But what about India? How should New Delhi see this? What should it read into this letter? There's no denying the softening of rhetoric from Washington. But the question is, will it lead to a softer policy? Trump's trade advisor Peter Navarro made an announcement today. He says India is coming to the table. Reports also say that a US trade official is visiting New Delhi tomorrow. The plan is to fast-track the deal. So far, so good. But coming to the table is just the first part, and frankly, India was always open to that. It was Trump who slapped the unilateral tariffs in between the talks. It was Trump who added the Russian oil angle. So this is no victory for the US. If anything, it's a positive for India. Trump tried to bully us into striking a bad deal, but India pushed back, hence this return to the talking table. And how it goes from here will depend on America's position, on what they want from India. Over the weekend, Trump's Commerce Secretary dropped a hint. He wants India to buy American corn. So America has a new complaint against India. Why don't you buy corn from us? The demand comes from Howard Lutnick. He is the US Commerce Secretary. He is also one of Trump's lieutenants who've been relentlessly targeting India, slamming India's trade policy and India's refusal to bend to Trump's demands. The same Howard Lutnick gave an interview to an American news website and he raised the issue of corn. Allow me to quote from what he said. The relationship is one way. They sell to us and take advantage of us. They block us from their economy and they sell to us while we are wide open for them to come in and take advantage. India brags that they have 1.4 billion people. Why won't 1.4 billion people buy 1 bushel of US corn? Doesn't that rub you the wrong way that they sell everything to us and they won't buy our corn? They put tariffs on everything. Lutnick calls this a one-way relationship. His larger complaint is about farm imports and India's refusal to buy American farm products. And why doesn't India buy American farm products? Why don't we buy their corn? The answer actually is quite simple. We don't buy it because we don't need it. India does not need American corn. And we can give you 3 reasons why. First, India produces enough corn on its own. There is no need to import really. Let me show you the numbers. This financial year, India is projected to produce 42 million tons of corn. 42 million tons. And how much do we consume in a year? Around 42.7 million tons. So basically, India is self-sufficient. Even if there is some import, it is marginal. In fact, until 2024, India was a net exporter of corn. We were sitting on a surplus. And we shared it with other nations. Typically, India exported 2 to 4 million tons of corn every year. Until last year. It was only in 2024 that there was some import, and that too was marginal. And that's the second factor. Last year, India imported only 1 million tons of corn, and this was due to ethanol production. You see, the government of India is making a big push for ethanol blended fuels. India has started a program called E20, and as part of this program, crops like corn are being mixed with petrol. This produces a cleaner fuel for cars, and this has led to a high demand for corn. Now, this is the reason why India had to import corn last year. Guess where we got it? Where was this corn imported from? 2 countries, Myanmar and Ukraine, not the United States of America. Now, both these countries, Myanmar and Ukraine, supply non-GM corn. GM stands for genetic modification. What are GM crops? Unlike traditional farming, where plants are bred over many years to get the quality that farmers want, GM crops are engineered in labs by scientists. They add or change genes. In other words, they genetically modify a plant's DNA. Modify it so that it may be able to fight off insects, or it may be able to withstand drought. These are GM crops. And this is the third factor. Nearly all American corn is GM or genetically modified. But India has banned GM crops. The only GM crop we allow is cotton, which is a non-food crop. For years, India's poultry and feed industries have been lobbying the government. They want the ban on GM crops to be lifted. They want GM corn for animal feed, but the government has been refusing. This is because of biosafety and food security concerns. So even if India decides to import more corn, American corn may not be an option. India will have to look for non-GM supplies. And this has become a major point of contention. Washington wants to sell us corn, but New Delhi doesn't want to buy it. It just shows how far apart both sides are. Despite this clear difference, New Delhi is trying to break the impasse. Reports say there has been some progress. Talks between the US and India are set to resume tomorrow. Washington is sending its trade negotiator to New Delhi. His name is Brendan Lynch. He will sit down with Rajesh Agarwal, who is a special secretary in India's Commerce Ministry and the chief negotiator in the trade talks from India's side. Reports say that these discussions are a precursor. If fruitful, they will lead to the 6th round of talks. So there seems to be an opening. Dialogue is back in focus. But the US will have to be more realistic in its expectations. Even if the government of India allows American corn, the consumers of India may reject it. Is Russia at war with NATO? It's the question echoing across Europe this week because what once felt unthinkable now looks dangerously possible. In less than 1 week, Russia has violated the skies of not one but 2 NATO countries. First Poland and now Romania. Each time Moscow used drones. And here's why this matters. Poland and Romania are not just any countries. They sit on NATO's eastern flank. They border Ukraine. Both these countries share borders with Ukraine. Their airspace is supposed to be shielded by the alliance's most sacred pledge, Article 5 of NATO. An attack on one is an attack on all. If you attack one NATO member, you will be at war with the entire alliance. Now, for decades, that red line was absolutely clear, but now Russia seems intent on probing it. So is Vladimir Putin deliberately testing NATO's resolve? Let's start with Romania. On Saturday evening, 2 Romanian F-16s were patrolling the border with Ukraine. Suddenly, the radar screens flared up. There was an intruder, a Russian-made Geran drone. Now, this is Iran Shahid drone, rebranded with the Russian name. It slipped into NATO airspace for nearly 50 minutes, 50 minutes. The F-16s were tracking it. They had authorization to shoot it down, but they did not do that. They did not shoot it down, and soon the drone slipped back across the border. Romania calls it a breach of sovereignty. It has also summoned the Russian ambassador. Moscow has shrugged off the charges. They call it a provocation by Ukraine instead. But here's why this is important. Romania sits right next to Ukraine. Its Black Sea coast faces Russian forces in Crimea. For Bucharest, airspace violations are not rare. They are a warning that the war is just a few kilometers away. Until now, Romania has kept a lower profile, but with drones buzzing, staying out of the spotlight is no longer an option. And Romania is not alone. Last week, Poland shot down 3 Russian drones. They had wandered across its skies. Warsaw called it an attack and scrambled jets. It raised air defenses to maximum readiness. NATO allies rushed in with words of support. And now the alliance is beefing up its eastern flank.
Today, General Kinkowicz and I are here to announce that NATO is launching Eastern Sentry to bolster our posture even further along our eastern flank. This military activity will commence in the coming days and will involve a range of assets from allies including Denmark, France, the United Kingdom, Germany and others. In addition to more traditional military capabilities, this effort will also feature elements designed to address the particular challenges associated with the use of drones.
And now Romania reports the same problem. 1 incident could be written off as a lost drone, but 2 in less than a week? That looks like a strategy. If you're Vladimir Putin, drones are the perfect way to test NATO. They're small, they're cheap, and they're deniable. Did it cross the border? Maybe. Was it intentional? Who knows? Was it worth going to war over? Almost certainly not. And then there's Washington. Donald Trump promised to end the war in Ukraine. He's met both Zelensky and Putin. He has promised tougher sanctions on Russia, but his response to the drones has been muddled. For Poland, Trump said it could be a mistake.
Your reaction to Russian drone incursion into Poland?
Could have been a mistake. Could have been a mistake. But regardless, I'm not happy about anything having to do with that whole situation. But hopefully it's going to come to an end.
So where does this go? NATO has three choices. One is cautious containment. The alliance can keep scrambling jets. They can issue statements, all to avoid escalation. But there's one risk here, one big risk. If more drones do keep coming, NATO looks toothless. The second option is firm retaliation, a warning strike or more border drills, beefing up reinforcements at the border. But this could drag it closer to the war, to direct war with Russia. A war with Russia, something that NATO is trying to avoid. The third option is political muscle. It can tighten sanctions, it can signal resolve without pulling a trigger.
There's still a lot of gathering happening. Irrespective, it shouldn't have happened. I don't think anybody's happy about it seeing happen. You saw NATO respond to it appropriately. We don't want to see it happen again. We think it's a unacceptable and unfortunate and dangerous development in this regard.
Right now, NATO seems to be straddling the line between option 1 and 3. But the grey zone is narrowing fast. This is not just about one drone in Romanian skies. It's about the credibility of NATO itself. Each incursion pushes NATO closer to a moment of choice. Look away, and the alliance risks looking weak. Strike back, and it risks a direct clash with Moscow. For now, Putin is writing the script, and NATO is still deciding whether to turn the page or to draw a line. Did yesterday feel a bit different? If you're a cricket fan, it must have, because yesterday was India versus Pakistan. Normally the hype is unreal. Fans pack the stadium, social media is buzzing, and TV viewership is through the roof. But this time there was a sense of gloom, and rightly so. This was the first India-Pakistan match after the Pahalgam terror attack, after Pakistan plotted to murder 26 Indian civilians. So naturally, it was politically charged. A lot of people did not want India to play. They wanted the team to boycott yesterday's match. But India's cricket board, the BCCI, decided against it. Not playing meant giving free points to Pakistan. So the BCCI said India would play. Which brings us to Sunday's match. It was being played on neutral turf in Dubai. But as the match began, one thing became quite obvious. This was not going to be a normal match. Just look at the pictures from inside the stadium. You'll see empty seats. It's unthinkable for India versus Pakistan. Reports say hundreds of tickets went unsold. Around a quarter of the seats were empty. Remember, we are talking about India versus Pakistan in cricket. In the past, both teams have filled stadiums with 100,000 seats, 1 lakh seats. But this time, even 25,000 seats could not be filled. And the match? Well, it went as expected. You see, the India-Pakistan rivalry is not what it used to be. These are not evenly matched teams anymore. India is way ahead of Pakistan, and we saw that yesterday. India restricted Pakistan to just 127. We chased that down in less than 16 overs. It was a thumping but expected victory. And soon the excitement turned to curiosity, because after winning, the Indian players did not shake hands with the Pakistani team. They just walked off into the dressing room. Later, Indian captain Surya Kumar Yadav explained the decision. He dedicated the win to the families of the Pahalgam victims. He also said some things are bigger than sportsman's spirit.
Few things in life are ahead of sportsman's spirit. We stand with all the victims of the Pahalgam terror attack, and we stand with their families. As I said, we dedicate this win to our brave armed forces who took part in Operation Sindoor.
It was a chaotic few moments in Dubai. Apparently, the Pakistan team was keen on a handshake. Their coach walked up to the Indian dressing room, but the Indian team had locked it. They refused to entertain Pakistan's request. And this snub clearly enraged Pakistan. Normally, the losing captain speaks after the match, but Pakistan did not send their captain to speak. They have also lodged a protest against the match referee. And why is that? Because he asked Pakistan's captain to not shake hands at the toss. The Pakistani side feels it's a violation of the game spirit. They want the match referee to be removed. If not, they're threatening some sort of action. Reports say they may even pull out of the Asia Cup. Now, here's the deal. Kudos to the Indian team for winning. Also, kudos for what they did afterwards. They took a stand for their people. But the question is, should things have reached this stage? Should the match have happened at all? The public sentiment was clear. They did not want the Indian team to play because the memories of Pahalgam are still fresh. Even families of the victims had spoken out. They urged the BCCI to boycott the match. Yet it went ahead. Also, this is precisely what Pakistan wants. They want the buzz around this cricket rivalry. They want the headlines around it. And most importantly, they want the money. So should India be giving it to them? The straight answer is no. India is the powerhouse in global cricket. Nothing happens in cricket without the BCCI's nod. And how did the BCCI become that powerful? Not just because of the team, not because of the support staff, but also because of Indian fans. We turned cricket into this billion-dollar jackpot, and we turned the BCCI into a powerful body. So shouldn't the BCCI's decisions reflect the fan consensus? Shouldn't it respect India's national mood? We say it should. And we have cut off most links with Pakistan. Art, cinema, water sharing, everything is on hold. So why should cricket be an exception? Why the different yardstick for cricket? If you cannot boycott, at least crack down. Use your influence to hold Pakistan and its cricket board accountable, because right now the fans are hurt. The men in blue are supposed to represent Indian values and sentiments, and playing Pakistan is against that sentiment. Our next story is from London. This weekend, it was the very picture of chaos. Over 100,000 people poured into the British capital. It was one of the biggest right-wing demonstrations in years. They called it the Unite the Kingdom March. It was led by far-right activist Tommy Robinson. He promised unity, but he delivered violence. There were street fights and clashes with police. More than 24 officers were injured. And where was Prime Minister Keir Starmer? At a football match with his son. His statement came only the next day, condemning the violence and defending the right to protest. And then came the international twist, featuring Elon Musk on video cheering on the rally. Downing Street has called his words, and I'm quoting, dangerous and inflammatory. Our next report has more.
I think the current government is a disgrace. I've never seen a government so disorganised.
London witnessed one of the largest right-wing demonstrations in recent memory over the weekend, as more than 110,000 people poured into the capital for the Unite the Kingdom March. The rally, billed as a show of patriotic unity, descended into violence as protesters clashed with police and counter-demonstrators, leaving at least 26 officers injured and at least 24 people under arrest. The march drew an estimated 150,000 participants, many carrying Union flags, St. George's crosses, and even US and Israeli flags. Some wore red Make America Great Again caps, associated with US President Donald Trump.
This is our country! You should be here standing with us!
Demonstrators chanted anti-immigration slogans, held placards reading "Send them home," and voiced sharp criticism of Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
They need to stop illegal migration into this country. It's tearing us apart. We've got people here, the veterans, our veterans that fought for us and for our freedom, lying on the streets with nowhere to go.
The anti-immigration march was organized by far-right activist Tommy Robinson. His real name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon, and he has long been associated with anti-immigrant and anti-Islam rhetoric. Robinson called the march quote-unquote a spark of cultural revolution in Great Britain.
You are here because you love your country. You love your children. And we want a better future and a safe future for them.
While the government sought to downplay the scale of demonstrations, the event featured high-profile appearances from abroad. US billionaire Elon Musk joined via video link.
I really think there's got to be a change of government in Britain.
Alongside speeches from French far-right politician Eric Zemmour and Peter Bystrom of Germany's anti-immigration AfD party. On the other hand, around 5,000 counter-protesters gathered at Whitehall under the banner of Stand Up to Racism.
I think it's very important to stand up to fascism. We are united, and it's a dangerous lie to try and say that men of colour are a threat to women, and I think we need to squash it.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer made no public comment on the day of the march. He was photographed instead at a football match with his son, even as violence flared across London. The next day, the PM said that people have a right to peaceful protest. He condemned the attacks on the police officers. But as chants against immigration echoed through central London, videos emerged of protesters queuing at food stalls. Not just any food stalls, but ones serving Indian street food. For many, it summed up the contradictions of the day, a march against immigration, fueled by the flavours immigration brought to Britain. Critics called it hypocrisy. Others simply called it irony. Either way, it left the Unite the Kingdom march with an aftertaste it did not intend.
It's quite the busy Monday in Doha. Arab and Muslim world leaders have gathered in the Qatari capital. The reason? An emergency summit. A summit of the Arab League and the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. And what is it about? Well, officially, it's a response to Israel's strike on Qatar. The one that happened last week. We told you about it. Israel attacked Doha, the capital of Qatar. It said it was targeting Hamas leaders who lived in Doha. Well, the attack failed to kill them, but it enraged the Arab and Muslim world. Qatar called it a breach of sovereignty. It said the Israeli strike was cowardly.
Israel claims to be a democracy surrounded by enemies, while in reality it is building an occupation and apartheid system hostile to its surroundings and waging a war of extermination during which it has committed crimes that know no red lines.
So officially, the meeting was about this strike, but unofficially, it has become a stage for something far more ambitious. There are talks of a joint Arab Islamic military force, or as they call it, an Arab NATO. And the idea itself is not new, by the way. It was first floated by Egypt back in 2015. That's when the Yemen war began, so Egypt proposed a joint force to coordinate between Arab armies. But it did not take off. There was too much skepticism and mistrust. And that was 10 years back. Today, the picture is remarkably different. Israel has crossed a new line. It has been fighting wars in this region for decades, but bombing Doha is a first. It's not the same as attacking Gaza or Beirut. This is a wealthy Gulf capital, a top American ally, and a key mediator in the Gaza war. So the Arab Muslim world is furious, and suddenly an Arab NATO does not sound like such a bad idea. Leading the charge again is Egypt. They floated the idea of a Cairo-based command. They want the first commander to be an Egyptian. After all, Egypt has West Asia's biggest army. But it won't be all Egypt. They've proposed rotating leadership, meaning all Arab League members will get a chance to take charge. The idea is to create a joint military force complete with air, land and naval units, also special operations teams, trained for counter-terrorism and peacekeeping. But is all of this symbolism, or will it lead to real action? And I'll tell you why I ask this. The Arab world has no shortage of summits or calls for solidarity. What it lacks is execution. And then there's the lack of consensus. Everyone wants something different here. Iran wants all Muslim countries to sever ties with Israel. Egypt wants hard military infrastructure in Cairo, and Qatar wants legal guarantees for its sovereignty. How do you reconcile all these demands? How do you stitch them into one coherent strategy? But let's for a moment assume that they pull it off. Then they will face their next challenge, the United States of America. For decades, the US has been the security guarantor in West Asia. Its bases stretch from Kuwait to Bahrain to Qatar. And now Arab leaders are openly wondering if the US will step up to protect them. And in case you're wondering, the US did condemn Israel's strike in Doha, but only in the mildest of terms. And then Secretary of State Marco Rubio landed in Israel. He'll soon be heading to Qatar. So to float the proposal of an Arab NATO during this visit may be a polite message to Washington. If you won't defend us, we will defend ourselves. But what would it mean for West Asia? If, and it's a big if an Arab NATO were to take shape, the map of West Asia could shift overnight. For Israel, certainly it would be a major shift. For years, Netanyahu's strategy was to normalize ties with Arab states, to sideline the Palestinian issue. The Abraham Accords were supposed to be the model, a peace deal to change West Asia. That was the plan. But an Arab NATO flips that script. And for the US, it would mean losing leverage in the region, a region that it has dominated for decades. But could it actually work? History says don't bet on it. Previous attempts at Arab unity have collapsed under the weight of egos, rivalries, and geopolitics. But history also teaches us this, that crises create openings. Israel's strike on Doha could be that moment. We'll have to wait and watch. Now let's shift our attention to the US and China. Their trade war has entered another domain. A new battle has erupted over chips. And this time, NVIDIA is at the center of it. The world's most valuable chip maker, an indispensable player in the AI world, and a company whose top boss personally lobbied Washington so that he could sell chips to China. The same NVIDIA is now being investigated in China, and today it was found guilty in an anti-monopoly case. China says NVIDIA has violated the country's laws, that it tried to become a market monopoly, and this has hurt smaller players. The probe began late last year. Today, Beijing announced its initial findings. It said that NVIDIA has broken the law. As always, China has not shared any specifics. They're not usually forthcoming with details. There is limited information in the public domain. But here's what we know. This investigation is linked to an acquisition that NVIDIA made. It happened in 2020, this acquisition. NVIDIA bought an Israeli company called Mellanox. This company makes networking solutions for servers. But why is China interested in this deal? After all, NVIDIA is not a Chinese company, neither is Mellanox. So why is Beijing investigating this deal? Because it was Beijing that signed off on this deal. And I'll explain why. NVIDIA does major business in China, so if it is involved in any big mergers or acquisitions, Beijing must sign off on it, and this is a common practice among major nations. And there's a simple reason for it. Regulators need to ensure that the deal does not harm competition, that it does not restrict market access, and that it does not hurt the domestic industry. So in 2020, China approved the Mellanox deal, but it attached strict conditions to it. And now China claims that NVIDIA violated those conditions. Of course, there's more to it. This case is not just about anti-monopoly practices. There's a clear political angle here. Over the weekend, China announced two major investigations. One is an anti-dumping probe. It will look into chip imports from the US. And the second is a review of US curbs on China's chip industry. Basically, Beijing has taken off the gloves, and Washington has been responding. Last week, it cracked down on two Chinese chip makers, GMC Semiconductor and G-Kun Semiconductor. They cannot buy American technology anymore. Again, there's a clear pattern here. Each side is trying to squeeze the other to find leverage through the chip-making industry. In fact, that's the reason why the US banned exports of advanced chips to China, and Beijing is reciprocating in kind. Reports say it has delayed the supplies of rare earths, and now it is investigating NVIDIA. And caught in the middle of this big power battle, is Jensen Huang. He's the chief of NVIDIA. He lobbied hard to keep the Chinese market. Last month, Donald Trump relented. He allowed NVIDIA to sell its chips to China. Reports say Huang is the one who orchestrated this pact. He offered a sweet deal to the US government. They would get 15% of NVIDIA's revenue from China. The US government would get 15%. That was a deal. And Huang was hoping to build on this breakthrough.
To have a great future here. NVIDIA has been coming to China for 30 years. As you know, China is the second largest technology market in the world. And it is also growing very quickly. And so this is a very important market. There's a lot of very dynamic and innovative customers. If you want to be a good supplier, a good company, you have to have excellent customers as well as excellent products.
It seems Beijing does not like this deal, so it is cracking down on American companies, using regulation to restrict them. For Donald Trump, this is a test. He promised to keep US dominance in AI, but he's met a plot twist in China. We'll be watching the next moves. Now let's turn to the Caribbean, where tensions between the US and Venezuela are boiling over. First, the US sent warships to the southern Caribbean. Then American forces struck a vessel there. They said it was hauling drugs from Venezuela. This attack left 11 people dead. Over the weekend, Venezuela shot back. It said the US was illegally boarding and seizing one of its fishing boats. And now Donald Trump has fired another salvo. He has accused Venezuela of sending gangs and drugs into the US. Experts say that the legality of these moves is questionable. Meanwhile, Venezuela is preparing to fight back. So what happens next? Could this spiral into a full-blown attack on mainland Venezuela? Donald Trump was asked this question, in fact, and his answer has only stoked the flames. Here's a report.
U.S. President Donald Trump has hit out at Venezuela again, accusing the country of sending gang members and drugs to his country. He has called it unacceptable. And when asked about the possibility of striking mainland Venezuela, this was Trump's response. We'll see what happens. Could this vague response be a veiled threat? After all, tensions are high between the two countries. The U.S. has deployed several Navy ships and thousands of troops near Venezuelan waters. The Trump administration says that the military buildup is to combat drug cartels. But President Nicolas Maduro says that drugs are not the issue here. He thinks this is about a regime change in his country. He has called the American naval buildup the greatest threat the continent has seen in the last 100 years. After all, a few weeks ago, things took a drastic turn. The U.S. carried out a strike. It blew up what it called a Venezuelan drug boat and killed 11 people without showing evidence. Caracas rejected the attack, saying that none of those killed were gang members. Now, the U.S. Congress is demanding justification for the attack. Amid escalating tensions, Washington has upped the stakes again. It is expanding its military presence in the southern Caribbean by sending warships and deploying 10 F-35 fighter jets to Puerto Rico. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth also visited a U.S. warship in the Caribbean. This weekend, Venezuela accused the U.S. of illegally boarding and occupying one of its fishing vessels in the country's special economic zone, calling it a direct provocation.
A Venezuelan tuna fishing vessel, with 9 humble fishermen on board, was in a hostile manner boarded by a unit of the United States Navy, equipped with significant weaponry, missiles, personnel, military troops and soldiers, and officers carrying long guns, war weapons.
Maduro has also upped his rhetoric.
We are obliged to structurally prepare to move to armed struggle with the Venezuelan nation if it's necessary to defend this land, to defend our people, to defend and assert our history of dignity.
The Venezuelan army has been mobilized, while civilians are being trained to defend the homeland.
Given current events, which we don't know how they will unfold, we must be ready for any future situation.
We're here today giving our best as Venezuelans, staying united, in fraternity, and standing shoulder to shoulder for what may happen in the coming days.
The U.S. naval buildup isn't likely to prevent much smuggling. After all, most cocaine bound for the U.S. moves through the Pacific, not the Caribbean. But maybe that's not what Trump is going for. His strikes seem intended to make a point. It is a show of force, so Venezuela says it is ready for a fight. But amid all this, the Caribbean remains on edge. Washington insists this is about drugs. Caracas says it's about control. And caught in the middle are millions of people, wondering what happens if words give way to war. And as both militaries dig in, and leaders trade threats, the question remains, is this a bluff, or the opening moves of something far more dangerous?
Do you know what's common between the job market and the dating market? AI has turned them both into a nightmare. Look at online dating. It was supposed to be easier, right? Just swipe, like, chat, and meet. Instead, people are swiping, liking, chatting, and getting ghosted. Now, the job market is following the same path. AI was supposed to streamline hiring. It promised to make job hunting more efficient. Instead, the job market has become more crowded and more frustrating. For instance, if you're looking for jobs, there are tons of online hiring platforms, and new ones are being launched every few days. Like OpenAI, they've announced their own hiring platform. It will be powered by AI, of course. But the number of platforms does not make things easier. When you log in, you're met with thousands of gigs. You're faced with hundreds or thousands of job listings. Many of them seem like a fit, so you apply, of course, with help from AI. Surveys show that last year, 38% college students used AI for their applications. This year, that number stands at 50%. So AI writes your resume, it tweaks your cover letter, it answers the company's screening questions, and then you hit send. You wait, and then nothing. Because while you're using AI to apply, recruiters are also using AI to filter you out. AI screens your resume before a human sees it. And that's not all. AI is being used for body language analysis, vocal assessments, and gamified tests. If you make it past the stage, AI schedules interviews. Sometimes it even conducts them using avatars, faceless voices, and real-time language generation. According to recent surveys, 72% of companies now use AI in recruitment. This is up from 58% last year. But despite all this technology, and sometimes maybe because of it, hiring is actually slowing down. In the US, the hiring rate has declined to its lowest point in years. In the UK, vacancies have been falling for 3 straight years. In India, most sectors saw a fall of up to 20% in hiring last quarter. In fact, across Asia, employment growth is expected to be low this year. And what is happening? Well, AI was meant to speed things up. Instead, it has flooded the system with mass applications, identical responses, and too many bots. Recruiters are overwhelmed and candidates are invisible. So what can you do? If you're job hunting, experts have a few tips for you. First of all, don't give up on AI. Learn to use it better. It's a tool. Optimize your resume with the right keywords and use it as a second opinion, not a crutch, like you would with Google or a friend. In any case, most cover letters look the same now. Your personal insight may beat ChatGPT, so make your voice count with an AI helping hand, perhaps. Secondly, target smaller and medium-sized companies. They often use less automation and more human judgment. It could be an opportunity for all you know. Thirdly, ask for feedback. If you are rejected, follow up, especially if you're qualified for the job, because you may be dealing with bias from AI systems, bias against accents, disabilities, or even non-standard resumes. And finally, go back to basics. Your good old network. Experts say that it is still the best way to land a job. So talk to friends, text old colleagues, and reach out to people already in the roles that you admire. After all, in a world where AI writes applications and filters them too, your best shot is being unapologetically human in an increasingly automated world. Perhaps that's how you stand out. When Tesla announced yet another massive pay package for its top boss Elon Musk, it broke the internet. It's been a few weeks since. It seems the world is still talking about it, and not always in a good way. The latest to weigh in is the Pope himself. He has called Elon Musk's $1 trillion pay package trouble. He has shared some data as well. The Pope has shared data. He says 60 years ago, a CEO earned 4 to 6 times more than his workers. Today, he says it is 600 times more. And shocking as it is, why is the Pope going after the world's richest man? Our next report tells you.
Pope Leo, the first American pope in history, is not holding back. In his first formal media interview, the 58-year-old launched a scathing critique of economic inequality. In the line of fire was Tesla CEO Elon Musk and his unprecedented $1 trillion compensation package. Pope Leo recalled how 60 years ago CEOs typically earned 4 to 6 times the wages of their employees. Today, he said, that gap has ballooned by as much as 600 times. He also addressed the news of Musk potentially becoming the first trillionaire in the world by saying, and I quote, "If that is the only thing that has value anymore, then we're in big trouble." The remarks underscored Pope's willingness to weigh in on the pressing issues of the day. That stance was visible again this weekend, when he addressed a Vatican seminar. His message was that theology must speak of modern crises, from climate change to artificial intelligence. When it comes to AI, Pope Leo urged the Church to go beyond ethics, to confront deeper questions like what is a human being, and what is his or her inherent dignity, which is irreconcilable with a digital android. Pope Leo's utterances have won him followers far beyond the Vatican. He's winning hearts on Instagram feeds, TikTok scrolls, and youth festivals across Europe.
I like the new Pope. I'm actually converting, so I'm not Catholic yet. So the Pope gives me really hope for a new future for all people. Seeing him yesterday, being 5 meters from him, he really gives out the energy that is a hope for us all, I think.
And there's hope for the Church as well, because after decades, Catholicism is showing signs of revival. Much of this resurgence is playing out online. Catholic influencers, priests, nuns, and lay people alike are drawing massive followings on TikTok and Instagram. These influencers post videos on everything from prayer tips to how to forgive. The Church calls it the work of digital missionaries. Sociologists are calling it the quiet revival. It is this digital wave that Pope Leo leaned into in July, when he welcomed 1,000 Catholic influencers to the Vatican. The youth gathering drew more than 1 million people near Rome.
It's just amazing to see just how big the world church is and how many people are here just believing in God and actually being on fire to see the Pope, to just live in this community. I really feel amazing and just very encouraged.
This resurgence of Catholicism is unexpected, driven by memes, live streams, and viral clips. For a church often portrayed as aging and in decline, it marks a profound shift. In France, baptisms among 18 to 25-year-olds have reportedly quadrupled in just 4 years. Belgium and Ireland have reportedly recorded similar spikes. As per reports, this year London's Archdiocese of Westminster reported its highest number of adult baptisms since 2018. From Musk's fortune to the rise of artificial intelligence, Pope Leo insists faith must speak directly to the world we live in. It's no wonder then that Gen Z, the generation more often linked to memes and streaming than Mass and Scripture, is finding its way back to the Church.
Just a final word on yesterday's India-Pakistan match. Like I said, India humiliated Pakistan. It was a one-sided thrashing, but the humiliation started even before the first ball was bowled. As always, you had the national anthems at the start. Pakistan's players were ready with their hands on their heart. What happened next will shock you. The DJ did start playing a song, but it was not the Pakistani national anthem. It was a song called Jalebi Baby. Let's just say everything went downhill after that.
अपने घर जाना है मुझे घर जाना है मुझे अपने घर जाना है
मजा आ रहा है मेरा जूस कहाँ गया क्या बात है
And now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. Israel strikes yet another high-rise building in Gaza City. Russia's supersonic bombers patrol the skies as part of the Belarus-Russia joint military drills. And a fire in a dense part of Manila leaves thousands homeless. Finally, we are taking you back in history on this day in 1978. Muhammad Ali won the world heavyweight boxing title for a record third time, becoming the first boxer ever to do so. Just a year after that, Ali announced that he was retiring, but finally left the sport in 1981. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
أخيرا نزل الله أكبر
Firstpost now available in 9 languages on YouTube. English,
Stands at $36 trillion.
French,
Le FMI, comme
German,
Geschäftsführenden Direktor,
Hindi,
$30 trillion ka karjo.
Indonesian,
Pemerintah tanpa pemeriksaan.
Italian,
Sekali radikali.
Japanese,
4 兆ドル以上も
Portuguese,
por causa do próprio balanço patrimonial.
Spanish.
Beautiful bill.
Go to Settings, click on Audio Track and select a language of your choice. Be the first to know what's happening around you in your first language. Firstpost.